And I want to talk about your branding because it's very unique and it stands out. Who came up with that concept?
Well, I mean, for us, we always knew we wanted to stand out. Growing up, how we did, being, skaters, listening to punk rock and snowboarding and stuff, it was always, there was never conformity anywhere, right? So once we got around to the branding and the marketing aspect of it, shopping around to different marketing companies, we talked with a bunch in Canada here, and I don't know, it's almost, I don't want to say they're all doing this, like, I don't want to say they're doing the same, but it was all very similar. And I mean, in Canada, we follow many trends from the United States. So Ali was like, well, let's just head this off and, let's go with a marketing firm out of the States just because we wanted to be different. So
yeah, it was, we're such simple people sometimes. So we met with a few companies in the States via Skype and email. We've yet to travel to meet them. And it came down to 2 different marketing firms in the States. One dude, we're explaining to them what we're going for, old school skateboard, old school punk rock. And he sent me a picture of himself in grade 12 and he had an 18-inch mohawk. And I was like, done, that's who we're going with. So that really is what the deciding factor was. It had nothing to do with their art. It had to do with the fact that he got where we were coming from. And so they did all the initial concepts and the logo and the initial illustrations. And then they kind of called one day and they said, we don't feel comfortable doing the artwork. We don't know if we can do it justice. So here's the concepts. We're going to try and shop around and find an artist. And I don't know how they did it, but they ended up finding a guy named Jimbo Phillips in Santa Cruz. And his dad was Jim Phillips, who did all the original skateboard decks back in like the 80s, whatnot, the old Screaming Hand for Santa Cruz. And so his son took over for him and Jimbo, and he had never done a brewery before or any beer. So he was super stoked on it. So it's kind of interesting. Our beer goes from here, well, our concept, our branding goes from Chemainus to North Carolina to the Brandit. And then from there, it goes Santa Cruz back to Chemainus.
But not only that, like the full circle of what's inspired you in your initial concept as well goes back to the guy that basically propelled.
Started it.
Yeah.
He's basically, his dad started this whole art style. And it was awesome. We were reading a story someone did on us once, and it started off and it was like, oh my God, that's going to be a horrible story about us. And it was saying how like you first see their graphics and it looks like they've ripped off skateboarding. And then it goes into, well, in fact, they couldn't have because they've found the original people who started it. So if anything, it's the most legit packaging out there. And it's kind of true. And everyone, it's amazing how many people recognize it and say, hey, this looks very Santa Cruz style. This looks very counterculture skateboarding. And it is. And if you notice on any of the packaging, it says Jimbo Phillips. It's just really small. So it's great. And I mean, we've been getting so much positive feedback about our artwork. It's amazing.
Yeah, we love it.
And then I have to ask, do you have skateboards for sale?
We've looked into getting a bunch printed.
We did get some made just for giveaways.
Yes, and we are still looking into it. It's just this funny thing with being a startup. It's that whole cash flow
that
thing
minor problem.
It's just like, yeah, I'd love to spend, heaps of money on branded skateboards, but... probably should pay some suppliers right now.
we got to, because our social media just lit up when people did see pictures of the skateboards because they did look pretty rad. So it's definitely on the list of merch we need to get, which I don't know how many other breweries out there are saying, God, we really need skateboards. That's what we need.